an incredibly dangerous robbery. This man was meant to get the money he was owed, but he unexpectedly became the sacrifice. The bitterest part was his accomplices saw him as a thorn in their side, while he was in fact the real victim. Initially, it was a calm and sunny afternoon. The four robbers, as always, received their orders from the mastermind and waited until the bank staff and transport team were making the exchange, then precisely stole an armored car full of cash. The guards, up against a well-trained robbery crew, were completely powerless to resist. They pointed their handguns at the innocent bank employees. After making sure all the employees were under their control, the robbers began to crack the safe, but then they found the information from their boss was clearly incorrect. This unexpected situation caused them to lose a lot of time. Luckily, Devon eventually figured out the correct code. Immediately, they pulled out 10 bags filled with cash, then quickly gathered all of the money. At that very moment, the alarm rang. They all instantly knew the police were on their way, and the four men quickly scrambled from the scene. As Devon was about to leave, he noticed several stacks of money still scattered in the armored car. Due to that slight delay, the other three had already run outside. They ripped off their masks and began to criticize each other, each thinking the other was absolutely terrible. By the time Devon ran outside to buy time, he pulled out a homemade bomb, but the mask obscured his vision, so he couldn't see the fuse. He finally managed to toss the bomb into the armored car, and then a terrifying explosion instantly went off, making him jump back. He never expected it to have such destructive power. After running out of the garage, he asked his crew for a bag of money, because the group had agreed to split up from there, so Devon decided to go to another airport to leave the area. Eventually, they would all meet up at their agreed location to split the money. His girlfriend rushed him into the car, waiting until the group had quickly fled the scene, before the police finally started to arrive. In the car, Devon turned to his girlfriend and recounted his glorious recent exploits. He claimed he'd charged in and dealt a blow to an opponent's head, then held a gun to them, making them stuff cash for him. Anyone who dared resist, he'd shoot their head off instantly. Behind his mask, he laughed wildly. Those fools were all terrified by him. Devon also stated bluntly that he was a true hero today. It was just a shame things were a little messed up, so he grabbed his gun and bravely charged in. At this point, his adrenaline was surging, making him feel completely high, but his girlfriend still asked if he really hadn't hit anyone. No matter how foolish Devon was, he knew how serious murder was. Robbery, at worst, meant a few years in prison, then freedom. But if a life was involved, his life would be over. He was going crazy about the robbery because his girlfriend's share was also in it. Ultimately, the money would be divided into 6 parts. Besides the 5 direct participants, one share had to go to the mastermind. Everyone had thought so from the start. Soon, they arrived at the hangar to wait for their accomplices, but he really wasn't good at flying plane. His girlfriend began to feel quite restless because they had once been betrayed by their accomplices and ended up losing everything. Devon, however, still seemed quite calm, but at this moment, he also began to feel uneasy. The group had agreed to escape together at this hour, but just as Devon opened the money bag to check, he found the entire contents had been swapped for blank paper. Those clever guys really had made him their intended sacrifice. Just then, police sirens began to wail in the distance. By this point, everything became clear as day. It turned out they were indeed the group used as bait, and now the police had completely surrounded both of them. Devon immediately realized the situation was extremely unstable, so he immediately decided to take his girlfriend hostage, because that was his only hope for an escape route. The police chief just stood there, silently watching his performance, and casually told him not to put his finger on the trigger, and this the end trigger. But everyone had missed one crucial detail, that what Devon was holding in his hand was actually just a phone. At the most inconvenient moment, his mother called him. It's true that no American would ever dare hang up on their mother. That phone call immediately ruined his entire escape plan. The police chief also understood that everything today was finished. The next second, Devon was pinned down by the SWAT team. Luckily, the police chief still kept his word, so he didn't make his mother panic and have a heart attack. The police chief could only feel helpless, because sometimes people still need to put themselves in each other's shoes. And when Devon finally became calm again, his mind slowly returned to a state of clarity. But first, Devon still had to spend a few days in jail. After receiving news, the plan went extremely smoothly. The old man was finally completely at ease, because business, after all, is still business. As long as he made money, he didn't care who fell. Not long after, Devon was sentenced to 8 years. Every day he spent in the cell felt as long as a year. Devon never would have imagined being betrayed by his own accomplices. But even so, he still didn't expose his accomplices, because after all, some of that money was his too. Every day, he replayed the scene in his mind over and over, and used it as motivation to survive. Even when he was beaten senseless by the prison toughs, he still never gave up on truly living a full life. Every day, he diligently trained, reminding himself not to slack off, and and before long, he could fight back against those toughs, eventually getting his sentence reduced and released early for good behavior. But the police officer, seeing his early release, felt something wasn't quite right. After all, it was rare for anyone to emerge from that place completely intact, especially since Devon still looked so naive and weak. But from now on, he was out on conditional release from prison. If the police found him engaged in any illegal activities whatsoever on the outside, then he would be sent straight back to prison immediately. Breathing in the scent of freedom made him feel alive again. Fresh out of prison, Devon held his head high. He had to reclaim everything that was rightfully his, so he first went to see his old friend Jules. Even Jules hadn't expected him to be released so quickly. It felt as if only 5 months had passed, but no one could deny it was an incredibly difficult time. Jules curiously asked if he'd managed to keep his virginity. Devon was surprised he'd been so direct with his question. He swore he was still completely intact when he came out, but Jules still looked full of doubt. He mentioned he'd heard some rumors from a mutual acquaintance that in there, Devon had some intimate dealings with a guy named Sharp. Devon immediately told him not to bring up that nonsense again, because what he needed now was a little trust. Besides, he was here for some serious business. As he spoke, Devon pulled out the watch his father left him. This should be enough to get a proper gun for use. Jules didn't want to press him too hard, so he immediately led him upstairs to get a gun. Initially, Devon assumed he would get a fairly good item to use, something like a 9mm pistol or similar, but Jules pulled out a tiny, old-fashioned gun from behind and calmly said it was a good item he'd kept carefully for years. Devon just stared blankly when he heard that. Because this jerk was clearly messing with him, even the ammo box he offered looked almost completely worn out, but having something to use was better than nothing. The next thing Devon planned was to find Jules, the mastermind behind the old robbery. By this time, Jules, thanks to the money he earned, already had his own office. He even hired an old, visually and hearing impaired woman as his receptionist. Every day, there was some activity coming from his office, to the point the old woman had grown used to it. Only this time, what Jules was targeting was his own black secretary. Meanwhile, Devon was still standing hesitantly outside, unsure how to go in and talk sense into Jules to make him obediently hand over the money. Devon kept mumbling outside, trying to figure out a plan. Little did he know, inside the room, things were already underway. By the time he finally managed to think it through, that he would just storm in, pull his gun, and show him how badly he'd been wronged. As Devon entered, the receptionist tried to stop him, but as he pushed the door open, he saw the black secretary slit George's throat. Devon initially planned to teach him a lesson, but he looked up and saw George trembling, turning his head. Then, with helpless wide eyes, he collapsed onto the chair. The secretary standing nearby was also stunned. She couldn't even perform first aid in time, so George met his unfortunate end right there. Devon hadn't even fully recovered. Then he remembered he was on parole. If police knew he was at the scene, his life would be over. The key was this: looked exactly like a murder, and the secretary was huddled in a ball, leaving him speechless. George was trying to mess with her first, but killing in excessive self-defense is still a crime. At this point, the secretary's only option was to call the police immediately to get a lighter sentence. If his parole officers saw him near this murder, they'd send him straight to hell. He was also so panicked he got blood on his hand. Now he and the secretary were in the same boat. They could only survive by proving their innocence. Who knew? That's when George's bodyguard burst in. Seeing his boss killed, he immediately rushed to grab Devon. Devon had initially planned to fight back. After years in prison honing his skills, Devon's body reacted almost instinctively. As the bodyguard charged, Devon kicked him to the ground. Devon didn't expect to cause such a big mess. As he turned to leave, the secretary grabbed him, wanting to go with him. She was too scared to call the police. When they ran into the hallway, seeing the fake receptionist, they immediately turned to the back door. Devon thought she'd at least have a car to escape, but she only took the bus to work. Devon thought only poor people took the bus. It seemed he'd have to use his old method to get a car again. Devon was too familiar with stealing cars. The secretary, with no other choice, had joined him. Devon started stealing cars at Pfeifentree. Once he started the engine, he sped off. He planned to take the secretary to the police station, as George was notorious in this area, but the secretary said she'd sought police help before, and George had settled it all with money. Her husband even accepted his offer. She had to retract her accusation, saying it was fabricated. Devon didn't expect her husband to be such a scumbag. Her family needed money, so it became an unspoken exchange. But now, the situation was different. She had just killed her boss. The secretary told Devon not to repeat what happened. She had seen this before. They were corrupt, incompetent, and linked power with money. Just like the police, they would distort all facts. Meanwhile, no one had heard the boss's voice for a long time, so when the receptionist slowly opened the door, she immediately saw a horrifying scene. Soon after, police sealed off the scene, investigated, then called old Bell with the news. Bell thought he misheard, but that guy had always been sloppy. It was no surprise for for enemies to seek revenge. Devon still didn't know an influential figure was watching him. The black secretary's mind was a mess. She felt suffocated by stress, but Devon told her to relax. After a few simple words, her mood calmed down. She had been George's secretary for a long time, a job outsiders could hardly imagine. Its pressure was much heavier than normal. All money transactions were under her control. That's why she always lived in danger. That's Pa. Devon said the next person they'd meet was his good friend, Billy. He was not only an old friend, but owed him a great favor. On surveillance, Devon was seen following right behind the black secretary. He seemed to be holding a gun to threaten her. The police chief found this very confusing, because these two should have just met for the first time, but the fake receptionist at the front desk insisted he had a gun. The police chief didn't want to hear vague speculation. After confirming Devon was a risk, he decided to launch a manhunt and issue a warrant. Meanwhile, Old Bell told Wynne to scout the situation. Lately, he'd lost a large sum betting. If this continued, he feared he'd lose everything. But Wynne reminded him the most important thing was still Devon. In the robbery 5 years ago, he was the scapegoat. He was just released on parole today, so Devon clearly held a deep grudge against George. But he could have spilled everything like a canary then. That would have reduced his prison sentence. But he didn't, so he might not know Old Bell is behind everything. If there's a threat, it's better to kill the wrong person than miss the right one. Wynne understood his meaning immediately. Devon was now nearing Toby's territory. Toby had recently gotten into drug trafficking, but Devon had no idea. He still thought the opponent was just a big, clumsy guy like before. But to be safe, he told the black secretary to stay downstairs. Then he gave her his gun for self-defense, because that big guy could be scary when he got angry. If he went in and didn't come out, she should call the police for him. But she had just killed someone. Now this gun was in her hands. What if it went off accidentally and something unexpected happened? Then she truly couldn't wash her hands clean. In the end, Devon still took the gun and went upstairs alone. When Devon stealthily approached the emergency staircase, he was suddenly struck from behind and knocked down. When someone pulled his hood down, Toby looked at him with disdain. He wasn't stupid like George. Devon swore he did nothing to George. Even his killer wasn't him. When his henchman pulled the gun from his pocket, Toby almost burst out laughing. This guy brought a gun, but couldn't even fire a bullet, yet he dared to ruin his best business. There was no mood for pleasantries between them now. Devon really didn't want to bother with those deceptive matters anymore. Just out of prison, he hadn't even met his girlfriend. What Devon wanted now was just his money back, and he also wanted to know why they chose him as the scapegoat then. Devon didn't want to cause trouble. He spent 5 years in prison for so-called brotherhood. Yet, as soon as they met, the opponent knocked him out. Did he know all along that George would betray them? Toby said they did have some mutual acquaintances, but the decision to betray was George's own. Devon, hearing this, coldly said, "Let's do this then." He'd been unlucky enough lately anyway. He also warned him not to touch his head, but just as the man paused, Devon suddenly sprang up and snatched the gun. During that, a gunshot immediately shattered the silent atmosphere. Toby now found this interesting, so before killing him, he wanted to watch for a bit, an example, anathemation. But the big, fierce black man opposite was a tough guy. As Devon saw an opening, he lunged and threw a punch. Finally, Devon struggled to take down that big guy, but 2 seconds later, Toby pointed that tiny gun at him. It seemed this was truly the end. Devon even tried to use kindness to sway him, who knew the gunshot made him so scared he closed his eyes tightly. Only then did he remember his gun wasn't loaded, but Toby still had another one. As he was about to act, the black secretary grabbed a nearby shotgun, then shot Toby's knee right there. As a result, the gun in his hand went off and conveniently blew his head off. This kind of twisted coincidence could only be caused by the secretary. The main thing is, she just killed a friend of his today. Then tonight, she sent off another one of his friends. But after all, she just saved his life, so Devon didn't know how to complain and just dragged her away quickly. This mess was clearly getting more complicated. Just then, downstairs, Wynne led his men up after them. Luckily, Devon had already led her out through the back door, but now he was getting further and further from getting his money back. Hearing this, the secretary asked what he had actually done. Then she learned that 5 years ago, Devon had participated in a robbery. Others took the money, but he got arrested. During that whole time, he had always kept silent. He thought everyone would return his share after he got out of prison. But now, it seemed this situation was getting more chaotic by the minute. The black secretary felt that George and Toby definitely both knew about this. George being a jerk was one thing, but even Toby was really bothered by it. It seemed there was truly some conspiracy in this case directly targeting Devon. If so, he only had one option: find his girlfriend for help. Devon thought that at least she wouldn't be easily bought off like that. The secretary listened at a loss for words. He clearly had a trustworthy ally to rely on. But he insisted on taking such a long detour. But thinking about it, she had caused him a lot of trouble before too. However, that was still better than what happened before meeting his girlfriend. He even chose to deal with George first, who knew she would witness Devon involved in a murder scene. It seemed both of them were truly in trouble now. If that's the case, then just calmly face reality. Devon really didn't want his girlfriend to see him in such a pathetic state. Moreover, he had promised that the next time they met, he would take her to their dream amusement park and ride all the rides. Unexpectedly, his biggest dream was just to ride the carousel. It may sound funny, but that was a man's promise. He was talking about Santa Monica Pier at the end of Route 66, a place many young Americans dream of visiting. Looking at the photo, the secretary decided to take one more risk with him, betting on his dream. As for her, when life was extremely hard, she wanted to learn harmonica properly for fun, but in the end, she couldn't even do that one small thing right. The secretary never thought she'd share a dream with a man, especially since the only man in her life before was a scoundrel. But if they didn't try, everything would just remain imagination. The main thing was that the police were probably closing in, so they immediately drove to Devon's girlfriend's old place. Devon kept telling himself that his girlfriend wouldn't betray him. She was an excellent cook, always making him delicious and flawless meals. So, in Devon's eyes, she was almost perfect. All along the way, he just prayed his girlfriend was still there, because then his life would still have some hope to cling to. Meanwhile, Wynn called Kimber, saying he had bad news for the boss, so Kimber should transfer him to Bell immediately. When Bell asked if he had the package, Wynn could only say that some things had gone beyond their expectation. Now, even Toby was dead, but he had found a very reliable guy who could handle Devon for them. Bell was tired of this. As long as that fool was dealt with, he could fill in any amount on the check. But as the camera pulled back, the hitman Wynn hired turned out to be a thug who had just been released. Devon drove to his girlfriend's house. It looked like someone was still living there, but when his girlfriend stepped out, she was holding a very cute little girl. The child couldn't have been 5 years old, so she certainly couldn't be his daughter. His girlfriend had been married once before, then divorced and met a man who stirred her feelings. She had thought of waiting for him after prison, but it didn't turn out as hoped. She also wanted to live a decent and peaceful life. Devon did have many good qualities, but what she needed was a real man, not a good sounding promise that couldn't support anyone. Both were adults, so there was no need for harsh words. Still, she was the only one who, when he wanted to leave, offered him money to start over. But Devon didn't want to bring trouble to her right after prison. Besides, he was the one who should have given her money. Happiness seemed to have never come for them, so in the end, everything could only conclude with a hug. Devon's face clearly showed extreme disappointment. Perhaps that was his fate. Are some dreams born only to vanish into thin air? On the drive away, Devon felt an emptiness he had never known. He threw the photo out the window, thinking he should probably start over. On the other side, Belle wanted to please his wife, so he intentionally brought her afternoon tea. But that small gesture couldn't make up for his secret affairs with younger women. Truthfully, Kimber could overlook many things, but she absolutely could not tolerate infidelity. That feeling of betrayal was truly a lifelong disgrace for her. So now, they only stayed married to save face for each other. Belle was about to become a councilman, so Kimber could still give him some time, but first, he'd better take care of that damn kid. Devon and the black secretary stopped at a diner. At this point, any food was a blessing. She told him not to let the girlfriend situation weigh on him, especially since Devon hadn't written to her in years. So, since things turned out this way, they just had to accept it. Devon once dreamed of carrying a huge bag of money and appearing before his girlfriend, but now he couldn't even fulfill that dream. He felt like a complete joke, but at least his girlfriend was moving forward. Perhaps that was the only good thing. Just as he was still thinking about the child with a strange expression, a familiar face suddenly appeared at the door. Devon's expression immediately changed, and he stood up. Even the black secretary instantly saw that the man looked like a professional enforcer. Devon quickly pulled her, trying to escape through the back door, but the staff said there was no back door. If that's the case, Devon told the person to give him a baseball bat or something similar. Hearing Devon, the staff just wanted to roll their eyes, but Devon said those idiots were about to rush in and bash his head in. The staff only offered to call the police, and soon after, Sharp led several big guys in. It was clear they weren't peaceful types. He really was crazy about Devon. This time he even brought a useful item. He just waited to smash Devon's head with that flail, and Devon was certainly not stupid enough to fight close range with that spiked weapon. While Sharp focused on Devon, the black secretary didn't hesitate. She immediately threw something at him, then turned and ran. Even Devon didn't expect her to run so methodically, but unfortunately, she wasn't good at choosing escape routes. Devon chased after her and found it was a dead end, so they both had no choice but to fight head on. But when Devon actually fought, he realized he was still very capable. Even with a weapon, the opponent got a beating. Just as Sharp walked in, chewing a sandwich, he angrily realized his men were all useless. Sure enough, take down a resilient fighter like Devon, real skill was needed, but with the baseball bat, Devon was fearless. However, Sharp's thick skin and fat meant normal hits were ineffective. Not to mention, he also held the flail and moved surprisingly fast. Finally, when Devon kicked him down, the black secretary rushed out and pushed a whole shelf onto him. that temporarily trapped Sharp. He couldn't believe Devon was still alive after he hired a hitman. Was killing a fool really that hard? Kimber decided to give him one last chance, but that put immense pressure on Bell, so he immediately called Wynne to tell him to speed things up. At the same time, the sheriff received the Black Secretary's card swipe history, so everyone was frantically searching for Devon. Devon and the Black Secretary were almost cornered. She never imagined working for George would drag her into such a terrible mess. Moreover, she initially thought Devon would be her savior, but he only made things more chaotic. Now, her marriage was clearly falling apart, so at this moment, Devon could only place all his hope on Kai. They were brothers to the death, so Devon was certain Kai wouldn't betray him. The Black Secretary was right about one thing: life couldn't betray them forever, but if she had truly reported it to the police, then, at most, they could only charge her with manslaughter. As for someone like him, he deserved to rot in prison. After all, they were never lucky. Unexpectedly, Bell proactively sought out the sheriff then, forced to create an escape route for himself. Now Bell was truly a lonely man. The sheriff never trusted him from the start. Now Bell showed up at his door, clearly hiding something. His days of peace were numbered. Bell felt a chill down his spine. It seemed things between him and the sheriff wouldn't end well, but he was still a councilman. Arresting him was like confronting the public. The sheriff just hoped Bell understood that most suffering in life stemmed from ignorance. The people like Bell, when pursuing their selfish happiness, always chose to step on others. Nevertheless, he still urged the sheriff to quickly apprehend the murderer. The sheriff thought Bell should worry about himself more, because those who worked with him years ago were almost all dead. Plus, it was the first time he'd seen Wynne look like that, so they'd better increase their security. As for Devon, he contacted Kai proactively before arriving. Kai was completely shocked Devon was still alive. As soon as Devon said he needed help, Kai responded with extreme enthusiasm. Even after 5 years, Kai still remembered his old friend. He even personally made Devon an energy smoothie. However, Devon remained cautious throughout and didn't dare touch anything. The Black Secretary thought it was fine. Kai also apologized for not visiting Devon in prison, but ultimately, the less contact he had with Devon, the less suspicion he'd attract. Everything in this room was bought with money he got from one robbery, which changed his life to financial freedom. That kind of life was exactly what Devon had always dreamed of. Unfortunately, this bastard stepped on Devon to get to where he was today. Clearly, all 3 others were involved, so Kai couldn't possibly be clean and uninvolved. He tried to deny knowing anything, but actually, when George was leaving, he mentioned Devon, but everyone said Devon didn't arrive at the airport on time, so Devon couldn't believe that explanation. The next second, he smashed the energy drink glass on the floor, splashing red liquid onto Kai's new sofa. Seeing Kai's tension, Devon knew he was right. Kai definitely had a part in it. Kai felt none of them did anything wrong that year because they robbed an armored car, so everyone knew the risks from the start. Any of them could have been caught and thrown in prison to take the fall. Hearing that, Devon was furious, punching Kai's nose and breaking it. All he wanted was the truth and his share of the money. Moreover, Kai initially planned to escape with him on the same flight, yet now he acted innocent, claiming they were family. The Black Secretary couldn't stand it anymore and stepped in, saying Kai deserved a chance to explain himself clearly. Finally, under Devon's pressure, Kai admitted he really couldn't do anything then. He knew their plan well and had tried to stop them, but in the end, he could only watch George divide the money into 4 parts. He never imagined the mastermind also got a share. Devon didn't want to push Kai too hard, especially seeing how sincere he seemed now. Devon said he only wanted his money back. Unless Kai returned it today, he definitely wouldn't leave. Kai seemed like a rather simple guy. As soon as he heard, he immediately went to prepare Devon's money. That made Devon a bit uncomfortable, but he also hoped Kai could help resolve the Black Secretary's troubles. They probably needed a truly reliable lawyer. Kai told him to rest assured and leave everything to him. Bell couldn't believe Wynne contacted Sharp. That monster's actions were truly brutal, but Wynne only cared if Sharp caused more trouble because they didn't want to take any risks. For years, Wynne had always cleaned up Bell's messes. Then, he quickly took 2 more assassins to find Devon. Not long after, Kai told Devon he had called the best people to handle this. The only thing was, he didn't know much about the mastermind, but his subordinates would definitely take care of everything. It was a shame his fancy sofa was ruined by Devon, but the lawyer was on the way. Unexpectedly, the SWAT team led by the sheriff was also approaching the scene. After checking their gear, they would storm Kai's apartment immediately. Today, he wanted to catch their entire gang in one go. Absolutely no more casualties were allowed. After confirming his subordinates were fully armed, Kai curiously asked what prison was really like. Was it just like in the movies? Like burly guys waiting in the bathroom every night? Devon said it wasn't as dark as Kai imagined. Hearing that, Kai seemed a bit disappointed. He also asked if Devon had found an old man for protection in there. Devon immediately knew Kai was deliberately teasing him, but the next second, Kai said Sob told him all those things. Devon's expression instantly changed, because besides that pervert, no one else could possibly know such thing. Sure enough, Sob walked in from the main door right after. Unexpectedly, Kai had also conspired with them early on. Early on, he had been plotting against Devon from the start. Moreover, Sub always wanted to use this chance to get closer to him. That freak had dirty intentions toward him for a long time. Looking back, this was indeed the most suitable stage for them. Sub even said this time he'd use his fist to give Devon a full body massage inside and out. Outside, the sheriff couldn't observe the situation in the room, so he grew anxious, not knowing what was really happening inside. The reflective glass made thermal imaging equipment completely useless. If this continued, he wasn't even sure if Devon was actually up there, so whether he could see or not, he decided to send men in to attack in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, Gwyn was monitoring the entire chaotic fight in the room via a chest-mounted camera on Sob. The giant flail swung right in front of Devon. If that hit someone, they wouldn't die, but would lose a layer of skin. Bell watched, wishing he could strangle Devon immediately. Infuriated by how hard it was to kill him, he also urged Sob to quickly finish him off. Yet, a guy who looked like a lowly servant could kill all his henchmen. Even Gwyn seemed to hear his subordinate's skull shattering. But right then, Devon accidentally punched the camera mounted on Sob's chest. Only then did he realize every move he made had been recorded. This was truly getting out of hand. Unexpectedly, the enemy had been tracking his every move from the start. It seemed this group was definitely connected to the mastermind. Devon angrily yelled for his opponent to clean their neck and wait, because sooner or later he would personally chop off their head and throw it in the trash. Bell was verbally abused, as if a bucket of dirty water had been splashed in his face. But just as Devon was furiously spewing insults, Sob unexpectedly got up and landed a powerful punch on him. At the same time, the sheriff was also preparing to lead his men straight into the room. The camera was obscured, so the image was temporarily lost, but the Black Secretary still clearly saw Devon was at a disadvantage. Just one punch made him so dizzy and disoriented that he couldn't fight back. Then, immediately after, he drew his dagger and stabbed down forcefully. Luckily, Devon quickly used his arm to shield his chest, blocking the attack. At that moment, the Black Secretary snatched his chained truncheon. Then, she conveniently tucked the camera into her pocket. Old Bell immediately said they had to eliminate all witnesses. As for Gwyn, he had to figure out how to dispose of them all. Unexpectedly, moments later, the Black Secretary swung the chained truncheon directly at Sob's back. This blow truly landed right on target, making him seriously dizzy. He was in so much pain that he cursed furiously, but the Black Secretary followed up with a punch straight to his face. Seeing the SWAT team about to storm in, she quickly helped Devon up and pulled him away. At this point, the SWAT team had flooded the yard to search for suspect, and it was the Black Secretary who saved Devon at the last moment. Once the sheriff burst inside, all he saw was Sob lying, groaning on the ground. After all, the recent truncheon blow was not light at all. As for Kai, he had been dead for a long time. Even so, he immediately called for an ambulance. Then he quickly asked Sob a few questions before his men took him away. He didn't expect that the recent blow hadn't come from Devon. Normally, Sob always wore a mesh armor underneath. Only today, he found it bothersome, so he didn't wear it and was hit squarely in the back. Seeing him lying there, still spouting filthy words, the sheriff immediately told his subordinates to drag him to the station on the other side. Because the camera hadn't been fully turned off, Gwyn and Old Bell also knew Devon's next destination. Even if he had to truly die, he still wanted to reach the place of his dream. Unexpectedly, that entire sentence reached Old Bell's ears. They unexpectedly forgot to completely turn off the camera. By the time the Black Secretary brought severely wounded Devon to the beach, he still held tightly onto his bleeding abdomen because he knew he wouldn't last much longer. But no matter what, he still wanted to see if that place was still there. Fortunately, the carousel was truly still intact. That was exactly where his dream rested. The Black Secretary helped him fall right onto it. Seeing the wound ooze, Devon's face twisted in pain. His condition at this moment truly hadn't improved much. Devon told her to get the stapler and close his wound, because going to the hospital now would be like walking into a trap. The secretary said if he wanted to live, he had to obey her. But moments later, Devon began to pass out, although this wasn't exactly a perfect ending. But at least he could die right on this carousel. Just then, Old Bell had also found the exact location. His subordinates immediately rushed forward to deal with them. As night gradually fell, Devon also accepted his fate, because they all had a part in it, and he hadn't accused anyone. In the end, he bore the burden of everything alone. Even Kay had ultimately betrayed him. He didn't expect this amusement park was still operating. He didn't know Old Bell was the one who had turned on the light. As soon as he saw Old Bell, Devon froze, because he had never before interacted with Old Bell. Yet, for no reason, Bell slapped him so hard he saw stars. Will immediately held his boss back, saying he would handle the current mess himself. As for his boss, it would be best if he calmed down first. After coldly uttering a threatening remark, Old Bell left Will to handle the scene. After all, they had been chasing Devon all day. Furthermore, he had killed quite a few of Bell's subordinates. Will wanted to know if they were holding any evidence of his crimes. Devon was beaten so badly he didn't understand what was happening until Will clarified that they were actually behind the entire robbery that year. He was thrown out as a scapegoat to bear the blame. Now, this revenge should just end here. Upon hearing that, Devon burst into laughter. These people really thought he got out of prison for revenge, but in reality, he only wanted to reclaim the money that was rightfully his. Seeing Will staring intently at the black secretary, Devon immediately stated this was a matter between them. It had absolutely nothing to do with her. Will truly didn't want to involve too many more people, but from today onward, everything about her would be under his surveillance. Devon's only crime was wanting to protect himself. If reclaiming what was rightfully his was also a crime, then these people truly pulled the rug out from under him. Will essentially didn't care about such rights and wrong. However, looking into Devon's determined eyes, the black secretary also seemed to realize who the real villain was. It was Old Bell standing right in front of them. On one hand, he was still scheming with Kimber. On the other hand, he deliberately ordered George's group to trouble Devon. So, the one truly trying to swallow others' shares now was definitely Bell. If everything had been seen through, then Old Bell wouldn't bother hiding anymore. For years, Bell had always nonchalantly profited from people like Devon, and next, Bell planned to put Devon in a pine coffin and send him straight home. Devon only felt guilty for ultimately dragging the black secretary into this. The assassin in front of him told him to turn around because he didn't want to see Devon die right before his eyes. But just as Devon stood up, he unexpectedly delivered a kick, sending the assassin flying. The opponent immediately opened fire, forcing him to dodge aside. The black secretary even tried to rush in and stop him, but moments later, a gunshot rang out and the assassin fell to the ground. It turned out the sheriff and everyone else had arrived in time. Devon could only apologize for causing him so much more trouble. But before he could say another word, he coughed up a large mouthful of blood right there. It seemed before taking him in, they had to call an ambulance first. Hours later, Old Bell was home when Kimber called him out to receive a guest. She gave a knowing smile, as if she had awaited this moment for a long time. As Old Bell stepped out alone and opened the door, the flashing police lights outside seemed to foreshadow his fate. The sheriff calmly said he was there to take Old Bell where he belonged, all because Bell didn't appreciate the person right in front of him. Then the sheriff took out the audio recording they had obtained from Devon. Inside, it clearly recorded his confession that he was behind everything. Unexpectedly, the thing that exposed him at the last minute was just a tiny camera. The sheriff would take Bell to court for official indictment. As for Devon, since he violated his parole, he now had to accept returning to jail. The black secretary came to visit him. Now, finally, neither of them had to live in fear anymore. Hearing her say she would visit him every week from now on, Devon felt she shouldn't waste her time on someone like him. But the black secretary said this time she didn't want to lose someone who was genuinely kind to her again. On the carousel, he wanted to save her, so she was extremely grateful for everything he did. Clearly, from the start, Devon could have just abandoned her and escaped alone. Yet, he chose to stay with her and bear everything. Ultimately, real feelings truly developed between them. The black secretary said she would wait for Devon to get out of jail, but this time, they definitely wouldn't go back to that damn amusement park again. As for Old Bell, after his trial, he was also sent straight to prison. He also swore to make those who betrayed him pay, but first he'd better think about how to keep himself safe in there, because his upcoming cellmate was none other than Sob. Seeing the sinister smile on his face, Old Bell immediately understood that his life was truly over.